his hand wrapped around her wrist so slowly that for a second, Zola thought she was imagining it. She wasn't. "There you are," Garrison said. His voice was warm, almost friendly. The way a man sounds when he wants everyone around him to think this is a perfectly normal conversation. "I've been looking everywhere for you, baby." Zola did not move. She did not scream. 4 years with this man had taught her that screaming made things worse. Moving too fast made things worse. Anything that embarrassed him in public made everything that followed so much worse. So she stood very still, and she thought very fast. The bar was packed. Music, laughter, nobody was watching. Nobody ever watched when you needed them to. Except one person. There was a man behind the bar. Tall, dark, completely still in the middle of all that noise, watching her the way you watch something that doesn't belong in the frame. He wasn't pouring drinks. He wasn't talking. He was just watching. Garrison pulled her wrist slightly. "Come on, let's go outside and talk." "I don't want to go outside." "Zola," the warmth left his voice, "just for a second, don't do this here." She had about 4 seconds to make a decision. Go outside with Garrison and disappear, or do something she had never done in 4 years with this man. Ask for help. She moved, fast, toward the bar. Garrison's hand tightened on her wrist, pulling back, but she had momentum and she used it, and she reached the bar and grabbed the stranger's sleeve and looked up at him and said it so quietly that only he could hear. "Please, don't let him take me." The man looked down at her hand on his sleeve. Then he looked up at Garrison, took him in slowly, and then, without any rush at all, he set down the glass in his hand. He came around the end of the bar, and he stood up straight. Garrison smiled. "You really don't want to do this." "I really don't want to do a lot of things," the man said. His voice was low and even, not loud, not aggressive, the kind of voice that doesn't need volume. "But here we are." "Listen." Garrison spread his free hand, the picture of reason. "This is between me and my wife. It's a private matter. You step back, nothing happens to your little bar, and we all go home." "She's not going home with you." Garrison's smile didn't move, but something behind his eyes did. "You don't know who I am." "You're a man with his hand on a woman who asked me for help." The man tilted his head slightly. "That's all I need to know." "That is a very dangerous answer." "Here's what's going to happen," the man said, like Garrison hadn't spoken at all. "I'm going to count down from 5. When I reach 1, you're going to be on the other side of that door. And if you're not," he let the silence sit where the threat would have been. 5. Garrison's jaw tightened. 4. He looked around the bar. The bartenders had gone still. 2 men near the entrance had turned without being asked, not looking at Garrison directly, just there, present. 3. "You have no idea," Garrison said quietly, "what you just started." 2. A long pause. Garrison looked at Zola. That look she knew. The one that said, "This is not over, this will never be over. Wherever you go I will find you, and we will finish this conversation on my terms." Then he looked back at the man who had not blinked once. 1. Garrison released her wrist. He adjusted the lapel of his jacket the way he always did when he needed to feel composed. He gave the man one last look, the kind that is not fear but knows it has met something it needs to reassess, and he walked out. The door closed. The music kept playing. Zola realized she was shaking. The man looked at her wrist, red marks where Garrison's fingers had been. He looked up at her face. "You're okay," he said. "Come with me." Drop where you're watching this from in the comments right now. I want to see where this story reaches. To understand everything that happened after that moment, you need to know what Zola had already survived to get there. Because she didn't walk into that bar by accident. She walked in because she had been running for 3 days straight, and that bar was the first place in 3 days where something made her stop. It started in Charleston, South Carolina. 3 days earlier, a parking lot, 2 in the morning, a USB drive in her hand and the quiet knowledge that when Garrison woke up and checked his files, she would need to be very far away. Garrison Vale ran a network underneath a legitimate-looking portfolio: real estate, logistics, restaurants nobody really came to for the food. For 4 years, she had been close enough to his operation to see the patterns: reference codes that didn't match official records, transfer dates that lined up with things that happened in the news, shell company names that appeared in too many documents. She built the picture slowly. 8 months of silence, watching, waiting. When she finally left, she didn't take clothes. She took the drive and she drove north, and she did not stop. By the time she crossed into Savannah, she had been awake 31 hours. Then she checked the email she should not have checked and found a message with no text, just a photo. Her car at a gas station, taken maybe 40 minutes after she had been there. She left the car 2 streets from the waterfront and went on foot. Fast, not running, because running makes you visible. River Street was crowded with tourists, musicians, couples. She found the first bar with enough people and enough noise, and she put her back against the far wall and watched every door. She had no reason to trust the man behind the bar. She trusted him anyway. He answered. The office was small. Monitors on one wall showing the bar from every angle, the street outside, the alley in the back. He poured water and set it in front of her and sat down across the desk and said nothing. Just waited. That silence undid her more than questions would have. "He's going to come back," she finally said. "Yes." "He doesn't let things go, ever. Not once in 4 years has he let anything go." "4 years," he repeated, not a question, filing it away. "I left 3 days ago." "Where from?" "Charleston." He nodded once, "And he followed you the whole way?" "I didn't know until this morning. I checked an email I shouldn't have. He sent a photo of my car at a gas station." She wrapped both hands around the water glass. "He was maybe 2 hours behind me when I got here." The man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My name is Rhett." She looked at him. "Why are you telling me that?" "Because you told me yours back at the bar. When you grabbed my sleeve, you said please. Most people would have just said help. You said please." He rested his forearms on the desk. "That tells me something about who you are. Thought you deserved to know who you're sitting across from." She didn't know what to do with that, so she said, "Zola." "I know," he almost smiled. "I heard him use it." A pause settled between them. "Zola," he said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly." "Okay. What did you take from him?" Her whole body went still. "I didn't say I took anything." "You didn't have to. The way he grabbed you, that wasn't about a woman who left him. Men who just want a woman back, they're desperate, emotional. He wasn't. He was controlled. That tells me there's something he needs from you specifically. Not you in general, something you have." He paused. "So what is it?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then she reached into the inside of her jacket and placed the USB drive on the desk between them. Rhett looked at it, didn't touch it. "What's on it?" 4 years, she said. "Transfer records, account codes, shell company structures, names attached to transactions that would take federal prosecutors about 48 hours to map into a case that would bury him." Rhett looked up from the drive. "You built this yourself?" "Over 8 months, quietly, while he thought I was just doing the filing." A long beat. "And he knows you have it." "He knows something is missing. He doesn't know exactly what yet, but he will as soon as he gets back to Charleston and pulls the right file." She met his eyes. "Which means I have maybe 12 hours before he knows exactly what he's looking for." Rhett was quiet for several seconds. She could not read his face, which was either reassuring or terrifying, and she couldn't decide which. "You understand," he said slowly, "that what you're holding is not just leverage. It's a target. Every hour you have that drive, you are the most important person he needs to find." "I know. And you still took it." I had been inside that cage for 4 years, she said. Her voice didn't shake, which surprised her. I was not leaving empty-handed. Rhett looked at her for a moment with an expression she had not expected. Not admiration exactly. Something more careful than that. Like he was looking at something and updating quietly what he thought it was worth. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at it, his face didn't change. He turned the screen toward her. Video, Garrison's face. A room in Charleston she recognized immediately. Rhett pressed play. Mr. Okafor. Garrison's voice came through the speaker, smooth and deliberate. By now you've heard my wife's version of events. I won't insult your intelligence by pretending I don't know who you are or how your operation runs. What I will say is this: Savannah was neutral ground. Past tense. Whatever understanding existed between our respective interests is now paused, effective tonight, until she is returned to me. He paused and looked directly into the camera with the flat certainty of a man who has never once had to wonder whether he would get what he wanted. I hope you make the right decision, for both your sakes. The video ended. Zola's hands were cold. He knows your name, she said. He does. How? I never told him about you. I never even told him where I was going. He has people. The kind of people who notice when a woman parks a car 2 streets from River Street and walks onto the waterfront on foot at night. Rhett set the phone face down. He found me fast, which means he was watching his contacts in this city before you even arrived. He was already suspicious. That means he knew before the gas station photo. Yes. She felt the room shift under her slightly. So he wasn't 2 hours behind me. He was. Closer, possibly already here. He said it evenly, like a fact, like something that needed to be known, not feared. That means we don't have 12 hours. We have less. That means this moved faster than I expected, Rhett said. He was already standing, already at the door. Celestine. A woman appeared before the sound of her name had fully left the room. Mid-30s, natural hair, the particular look of someone who processes information 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Tybee, Rhett said. Tonight, get the house ready and take her ahead. I'll follow within the hour. Celestine looked at Zola, then back at Rhett. Security. Full, and call Deo. I want eyes on this block until we're clear. Celestine was gone. Now let me ask you something, because I need you to think about this. If you were Zola in that moment, you're sitting in a stranger's office. You've just watched the man who terrorized you for 4 years say this stranger's name like he owns him too. Do you stay? Do you trust Rhett? Or do you take that drive and run on your own? Tell me in the comments what you would have done, because what happens next changes everything. Zola stood up. I can't keep dragging you into. He used my name, Rhett said simply. You didn't drag me into anything. He did. He moved to the door and then stopped and turned back to look at her. You trusted me once tonight. I know that wasn't easy for you. I'm asking you to do it one more time. She held his gaze. Okay, she said. The drive to Tybee Island took 20 minutes. Celestine didn't talk much and Zola didn't push. At one point, Celestine handed her a paper bag with food in it and said, "Eat." And when Zola started to say she wasn't hungry, Celestine just said, "I didn't ask if you were hungry. Eat." Zola ate. The safe house was a beach cottage behind tall grass, sitting back from the main road like it was hiding. Inside it was clean, spare, functional. 3 exits. Zola counted them without being told to, which said something about where her head had been living for the past 4 years. Celestine showed her a room. Bed, clean sheets, a first aid kit on the nightstand. Rhett's handling the street, Celestine said. He'll be here within the hour. What is he exactly? Zola asked. Celestine paused in the doorway, thought about it. Someone who decides in this city who gets to feel safe and who doesn't. That's not a job title. No, Celestine agreed. It's not. She leaned against the door frame. He built something here over 11 years. Not loud, not visible, but real. People come to him when the official options don't work or can't be trusted. He manages it. A pause. He doesn't do this for everyone, just so you know. Why me? Celestine looked at her for a moment. Because you said please, she said. Then she was gone. Zola sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in 3 days she was not in a car, and not in a crowd, and not actively running. The quiet was almost louder than the noise had been. She was still sitting there when the first window shattered. Not broke, shattered. Explosion of glass, and then a sound she had never heard in real life before, sharp, short, nothing like it sounds on television, and her body moved before her brain caught up. She was off the bed and on the floor, and she didn't know when she had made that decision. Then Rhett was through the door. She had not heard the front door. She had not heard his footsteps. He was simply there in the doorway, and then he was across the room, and he was between her and the window, and his hand was on her shoulder pressing her down. "Stay low," he said. "Don't move from this position." "What's happening?" Garrison's men, 2 on the east side, at least 1 more out back. His voice was completely flat, not panicked, not shaking. The voice of someone who had navigated rooms like this before. "They moved faster than I expected. That means he was already closer than I thought." Another shot. The wall above the bed cracked. Zola pressed herself smaller. Her heart was slamming against her ribs, but she could not hear it over the noise. "Celestine," Rhett called toward the hallway. "East side is contained," Celestine's voice came back, tight and focused. "Working on the back." Rhett had his phone out. He was talking fast and low, and whoever was on the other end was talking just as fast. She caught fragments and coordinates she didn't recognize. A name repeated twice, the word done, and then he dropped the phone back in his pocket. He looked at Zola. "How are you?" That was when the second burst of glass hit. She felt it before it registered. A sharp white line of pain across her arm, just below the shoulder. She looked down and saw blood soaking through her sleeve, and somewhere very far away she heard herself make a sound she didn't recognize. Rhett saw it in the same second she did. "Look at me." He was already moving toward her, hand pressing her arm. "Zola, look at me." She looked up. "It's a graze, you understand me, it's a graze. There's blood, but you are not badly hurt." His eyes were locked on hers, steady. "I need you to stay with me right now. Can you do that?" "Yes," she said, and then, because her voice was shaking and she hated that, "I'm fine." "I know you are," like it was already true. "How many fingers am I holding up?" She blinked, focused. 3. "Good, keep looking at me, not at the arm." His voice was completely even. "What's your full name?" "Zola Adiz Femi." "Good, where are you from originally?" "Why are you asking me that right now?" "Because you're focusing on my voice instead of the pain. Keep going. Where are you from?" She almost laughed, almost. "Lagos, I moved when I was 12. "Lagos," he repeated. "And your mother's name?" "Rhett." "Humor me." "Adana." "Adana," he said. "Good, I've got you, don't move." Outside the sound changed. Fewer shots. Then voices, Rhett's people she understood now, moving. Then a long silence. Then nothing. Just the Atlantic, somewhere beyond the grass, indifferent and patient. Rhett kept his hand on her arm. He did not move. When she woke up, the light was pale yellow, and the sound was ocean, and Celestine was in the chair beside the bed holding a cup of tea, and watching her the way you watch someone you have been quietly worried about. "Good morning," Celestine said. Zola tried to sit up. The arm protested loudly. "Slowly," Celestine said. "Rhett." "Alive, unhurt. He's been gone since 4 in the morning dealing with the situation." Celestine leaned forward and helped her sit. "Garrison's men are gone. 2 were taken. Garrison himself ran." Zola absorbed that. He ran. He panicked. He escalated too fast. He tipped his hand, and when it didn't go the way he planned, he ran. That's actually useful information. It means he's scared. It means he's desperate, Celestine said, and the distinction in her voice mattered. Scared men freeze. Desperate men get dangerous in unpredictable ways. She handed Zola the tea. That's why Rhett's been on the phone since 4. Zola looked up. Were you scared last night? Celestine considered that with the seriousness it deserved. I was focused. There's a difference. You didn't show it. Showing it doesn't help anything. She met Zola's eyes. Were you? Terrified, Zola said simply. But I stayed on the floor and I didn't move, so. Celestine nodded slowly. That is exactly what not scared looks like from the outside. A pause. You did well. It was said plainly, without warmth but without coldness either. A professional assessment. Somehow that made it mean more than if it had been kind. Zola held the cup in both hands and looked at the window. Morning light. Outside, she could hear the island waking up. She was not watching the door. She only realized this after a full minute had passed, and she understood that she had simply been looking at the window, at the light, at the ordinary beautiful fact of a morning that had arrived without disaster. She had not once checked the exit. Something small and fragile moved in her chest. Who is he? Zola asked. Actually. Celestine was quiet for a moment. He runs things in Savannah, has for 11 years. Not loudly, Rhett doesn't do loud. But if something happens in this city and it needs to be handled or it needs to be stopped, he's the phone call. She paused. Garrison sending that video using Rhett's name was the single stupidest thing he could have done. He basically declared war on someone who has been managing this city quietly and successfully for over a decade. And I started that. No, Celestine's voice was firm. Garrison started it, you survived it, those are different things. She stood up. Rhett wants to talk to you when you're ready, he's on the porch. The porch faced the ocean. Rhett was sitting in one of 2 wooden chairs, both hands around a coffee cup, watching the water. He looked like a man who had been awake for most of the night and was not planning to mention it. Zola sat in the chair beside him. For a while neither of them spoke, just the ocean, just the morning. She broke the silence first. You were there faster than you should have been last night. I never left, he said. She looked at him. What? I told you I'd follow within the hour. I was there in 15 minutes. He turned the coffee cup slowly. Something felt wrong about the timing. Garrison responded too fast. I wasn't comfortable being anywhere other than that house. She didn't know what to say to that, so she asked the question she actually needed answered. What happens now? Rhett set the cup down on the porch railing. The documents you have, I had someone I trust look at the structure you described. What you built over those 8 months. Zola, it's enough. Not possibly enough. Not in favorable circumstances enough. It is enough. Transfer records, account structures, names tied to transactions. That's a federal case that builds itself. Then why does it feel like it's not over? Because data proves facts, he said. A witness proves a story. Garrison's lawyers are exceptional. They will call it fabrication. Call it a bitter ex-wife with a motive. Call it anything they can find to put reasonable doubt in the room. He paused. The prosecutors in Atlanta will want you to testify. She stared at the ocean. If I testify, he comes for me. He's already coming for you. If I don't testify, he comes for you anyway, Rhett said. You know too much now regardless of the drive. There's no version of this where you hand him the USB, say sorry, and he thanks you and goes home. That version doesn't exist. He turned to look at her directly. The only real question is whether you fight this on your terms with lawyers, with a courtroom, with a case that destroys him completely and permanently, or whether you spend the rest of your life doing what you've been doing for 3 days. Running. Running. The word landed between them and just sat there. Zola felt the weight of it. 4 years, 3 days, never stopped moving. The rule she had built her survival on. The thing that had kept her alive long enough to get here. She turned it over and looked at its other side. The people in Atlanta, she said. How do I know they're clean? How do I know Garrison can't reach them? Because I know which ones he can't reach, Rhett said. And I made those calls last night. You made those calls last night, she repeated, while you were also managing the aftermath of an armed attack on your property. People can do two things at once. She almost laughed. It caught her off guard, not a full laugh, just a quick, helpless exhale, and she covered it with her hand, and he watched her with something in his expression that was careful and warm at the same time. She got herself back. Why? She asked. Why are you doing this? He declared war on you because of me. Your property got shot up because of me. You could have handed me to him last night and made all of this disappear. Rhett was quiet for a moment, not avoiding the question, sitting with it properly. He put his hand on a woman who asked me for help, he said finally. And then he had the nerve to send me a video using my name like that was supposed to frighten me into fixing his problem for him. A pause. He misunderstood the situation from the beginning. You didn't come into my bar, Zola. You came into my city. She held his gaze. And the other reason, he said, quieter. You walked out of that house alone in the middle of the night with nothing but a drive and however much fear you were carrying. You did that alone. Whatever I've done this week, it doesn't come close to what you did that night. The ocean moved. A brown pelican glided low over the water and disappeared into the glare. Zola thought about the cage with no bars. About 4 years of making herself smaller and quieter and easier and less threatening. About the night she stopped. About the particular, terrible courage of a decision made in the dark when no one is watching and you have no guarantee that it is going to work. She thought about what she had whispered in that bar. Please don't let him take me. And the man who had heard her. If I do this, she said slowly, I need everything in writing, not promises. Not Rhett Ockhaffer's word, whoever that is. Documents, contact names. A process I can understand and verify. Done. And if he makes a move on me before the case is filed, he won't get close enough. That's not a legal guarantee. No, he agreed, it's a different kind. She thought about that, about the difference between legal and certain, about the fact that she had survived 4 years on the strength of her own judgment, and right now, on this porch, on this morning, her judgment was saying one very clear thing. When does it go to Atlanta? She asked. I can have a meeting arranged within 48 hours, but I need to know you're in before I make that call. Once I make it, the process starts. It doesn't unstart. And between now and then, you stay here. You don't contact anyone from your old life. You don't use any device he could have access to. I understand all of that. She turned to face him fully. What I'm asking is, between now and the moment I walk into that courthouse, what is the thing most likely to go wrong? He didn't look away. Garrison making a direct move before we get there. And you'll stop that. I will do everything in my power to stop that. She paused. Have you ever failed? A beat, once, a long time ago. I made a decision based on what I thought someone needed instead of what they actually asked for. I was wrong. He didn't elaborate. I don't make that mistake anymore. Meaning? Meaning you asked me for help and I helped you. You didn't ask me to take over. I'm not taking over. That's not a yes. No, he said. It's not, because I don't make promises I can't guarantee. What I can tell you is that I have not lost anyone under my protection in 11 years, and I am not starting with you. The silence that followed that was not empty. It was full of something she was still learning the shape of. You already trusted me once, Rhett said. His voice was quiet. In that bar, you had nothing, no reason, no information, no time. You just decided. He paused. I think it's my turn now. The Atlantic stretched out in front of them. Enormous. Patient. Carrying the light the way it always does in the morning when the sun is still low and everything looks like it was recently cleaned. Zola took a breath. Okay, she said. Not loud, not dramatic, just a word, just a choice. Rhett did not celebrate, did not move. He just nodded once like he was acknowledging the weight of it, giving it the respect it deserved. She looked at the water for a long time after that. She had stopped running. Not because someone had stopped her. Not because she was trapped or tired or out of road. Because she had chosen, on a porch on Tybee Island on a Tuesday morning, that the thing she had been doing for 4 years and 3 days had a different name now. It wasn't survival anymore. It was a case. Her case. Her voice. Her documents. Her 4 years of watching and waiting and saying nothing turned, finally, into something that would walk into a courtroom in Atlanta and dismantle Garrison Vale from the inside out, on the record, in front of people who could not be bought. Garrison had spent 4 years believing he owned her. He had never once understood what she was building. There is a particular kind of quiet that comes after a long fight. Not peace exactly. Not safety yet. Just the first real breath you've taken in longer than you can remember. The kind where your chest actually expands all the way, where the air goes all the way in, where for one moment the future is not something chasing you but something you are walking toward. Zola sat in that chair on that porch and breathed. And somewhere in Charleston, South Carolina, Garrison Vale was on a phone he thought was secure, making calls he thought were quiet, pulling strings he thought were still his to pull. He had no idea. Not yet. If this story kept you here to the end, you already know what to do. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. Hit like if Zola's walk out of that house gave you chills, and drop a comment telling me which moment hit you hardest. I read every single one.